Hello and welcome back to yet another video on our YouTube channel, and today we're going to talk about a very important topic, because when I started buying luxury watches and wearing them, most people would be like, why would you spend so much money on a watch, man? You could spend it for everything. You could go on vacation, buy a new car or whatever. But the thing is that there are certain reasons why I would always buy a luxury watch before buying anything other from the luxury segment. And today I'm going to tell you some reasons that I find very convincing when talking with those people. So first of all, let's start with the most obvious. Luxury watches look great. I know that there are exceptions. I know that there are watches that are not really that conventionally beautiful, but most of the luxury brands, if we take for example Patek Philippe, if we take Rolex, if we take APs, if we take Omega, most of their models look good and everybody can appreciate the design. And everybody who right now would be like, nah man, I don't feel Rolex, I don't like it. Just think about it, that most fashion brands that produce watches, cheap watches you have to say, are copying their style. They're copying the style of the existing big manufacturers. That's why they sell even some watches. So I think nobody can deny that a Rolex is for most people a beautiful watch. And that's just the most simple reason. And the thing is, why do most people like the Rolex design? And for me, there's only one explanation. It's because so much thought has been brought into this, the creation of their watches, of their models. They exist now for, if I think about the Datejust, if we think about all their models, we have to say, it's some decades that they produced this design. Of course, they always redesign it, make it more modern, but in the end, the design stays the same. And this means for me that the design is so beautiful, so nice, so well made that it is absolutely timeless. So when you're thinking about buying a watch in 2000, you would think about a Datejust. If we think about buying a watch now in 2024, a lot of people still think about the Datejust. And this is something that, if you think about it, it's not so common. You don't have many things that are beautiful and considered beautiful by most people for such a long period of time. This is something that is fairly subjective, I have to say. Some people will say they don't like watches at all, they don't like flashy watches, they don't like Rolex, they don't like to spend so much. That's everything okay, but for most people, if they see a beautiful luxury watch, they will consider it to be beautiful. So let's continue with the next topic, and this is something that is a big thing in Germany and I think in Europe, but mostly I can talk about Germany, that people buy luxury watches as kind of an investment. And this is something that I'm not a too big fan of, because I think if you buy a luxury watch, you shouldn't buy it as an investment. You should buy it because you want to wear it, because you find it beautiful, because you want, just to own it, not to sell it again and make a profit, or at least keep your money. But the thing is, even if you're not considering it, most luxury watches are actually a good investment, because you can wear them every day, you can live with it, you can go out, you can party with watches, you can do whatever you want with them. Then you have to, of course, maintain them sometimes, you have to make a service, you have to polish them if they don't look so great anymore. But in the end, if you want to sell them again, you will get a good amount of money back. So even if you buy a watch that is not a Rolex, that is not the best investment, if you buy, let's say for example, a Seamaster, then you will spend around, let's say, 4,500 euros for it. And if you wear it every day for 2 years and at some point just realize that you don't want to have it anymore, you sell it and you lose, I would say, not even 20% on the watch. And that is, in my opinion, a good investment, because you wore it, you had fun with it, it was a hobby for you, and you didn't lose too much money. If we now look at it in a longer range, then you can see that if you keep a luxury watch for 20, 30, 40 years, you will most probably make good money from it. Because the watches that we buy now, the vintage watches, if you look at the GMT Masters and Submariners from the 90s, they cost not even half of what we pay now. This is something that I believe will continue. I think luxury watches will always have their value. Even if the markets go down, you can be sure that at least least holds a big percentage of the value that you spend on the watch. Thing I'm gonna talk about is craftsmanship. It's just the technology behind it that fascinates a lot of people. For example, when I bought my first luxury watch, I wanted the watchmaker to open it so I can see the movement, so I can see what technology lies behind this case. And in my opinion, it's absolutely fascinating that you can basically just wear a watch and your movement alone can wind it and let it work for up to 2, 3, 4 days, depending of course on which watch we're talking about. This is something that fascinates me and a lot of other people. And if we go now into the complications topic, if we talk about moon phases, if we talk about day dates, if we talk about GMTs, or even about tourbillons, if we talk about chronographs, then you have so much functionalities, you have so much technology in such a little small device. For me, it's absolutely mind-blowing how so much technology can fit in one watch. And if we're talking about like the most complicated watches, calendars that are sometimes so thin that you just sometimes ask yourself, how can anything be in there? Craftsmanship is a big part of the watches. It is something that determines also how desirable a watch is. The higher the craftsmanship, mostly, not always, but the higher the craftsmanship, the higher the value and how people view it. You always have with this craftsmanship only a few people in the world that can produce it like this. So last time I remember when we sent a watch to a manufacturer for a service, they took quite some time to service it. And when we asked why it is like this, they told us that there are only 3 or 4 people in their company that can produce the part that was needed for this service. You can be sure that there will not be an inflation of luxury watches on the market. Of course, there are a lot of Rolex going out every year, but if you're looking into it compared to how many people want to have luxury watches, it's not comparable. It's just so much more desired than people can produce. And this is why it makes it also very limited, very prestigious to have a luxury watch. It's not just because somebody said this watch is gonna be 12,000 euros and you just spent this money. It's because you also need to consider that this is something, a skill that not a lot of people in the world have. You have to consider that this is a very special thing that is really hard to produce and really hard to bring out. The next the next thing I'm gonna talk about is the overall expenses and costs. And most people will consider this a downside of luxury watches. And this is partially true. But on the other hand, if you consider how many watches you would buy in one lifetime, because for example, if you buy a cheap watch for 200-300 euros, then you will most probably have to replace it after 5, 6, 7 years. Some of them are a little bit more durable. For example, if you take a Seiko, if you take a Tissot, then you will probably spend more than that, and it will also be more durable. But the thing is that if you consider 60 years of wearing a watch, and if you think about buying, let's say, a new watch every 5 years, then the costs of buying new watches, changing batteries, it is enormous. On the other hand, if you buy 1 or 2 luxury watches, of course you have to maintain them, you have to service them. In the end, you will probably spend more money than what you spend on the fashion brand cheap watches. But don't forget that you at least hold something in your hand that has some value. So if you wear this watch for 60 years, let's say 60 years, you have 2 watches, and you sell them after 60 years, and you get the money back that you spent over all the time, then you spent absolutely nothing for a watch. And this is not an unrealistic scenario. This is very much possible to happen if you commit to just 2-3 watches. Of course, most people that collect watches will not just buy 2 in their lifetime, they will buy dozens, but in the end this is a choice. And if you are really just doing it for, let's say, an economical standpoint, do it, because it might be the smartest decision. And also you have to consider the ecological thing, because if you buy 10, 15, 20 watches, you always throw them away. You have a lot of cheap labor in third world countries that runs into these watches, and you throw them away. So you're supporting a system that is exploiting people that are using cheap materials. I mean, this is not a cost per se. You don't pay for the better working conditions in Switzerland, but you support the system that pays their workers, their employees fair. This is something that most people don't think about when thinking about luxury watches, because they are produced in Switzerland. You can be sure that the people working on these watches have enough on their plate, they have enough to eat, they have enough to live with, they have a good roof over their heads. So this is a system that I can and want to support. So this is why I would always also buy luxury watches and not change back again to any cheap fashion brand watch, even if this is not the main reason, obviously. And now, before people say it in the comment section, yes, I'm absolutely aware that most clothes that you buy are produced in third world countries, but this is something that you can at some point improve, that you can put some thought in. But with watches, it's pretty simple. If you buy a Swiss watch, you get a watch produced in Switzerland, at least most of the watch. And this is the easiest way to support a good system. And this goes also to the next topic. And this is something that is my main motivator why I buy luxury watches and why I love them so much. Because I talked about durability, I talked about ecological, economical views on watches, and also about emotional and aesthetic things. But the thing that catches me the most, knowing that when I'm gone at some point, when I will not be here anymore, that I can inherit my watch to my children, or my watches to my children, so they can wear the watches, can think about me and what I did to get those watches. And this is something that you cannot reproduce with any other product. If you think about it, your clothes, you will not be able to let your children wear your jackets, because at some point jackets are destroyed, you cannot wear them forever. The styles change, people will not wear old clothes, they don't want them. But if it comes to watches, they are so timeless that even if you, for example, inherit a watch from your great-grandfather, and it is a watch from the 30s or 40s, even then the watch will most probably look very good today, if it was, of course, taken good care of. This is something that you can inherit your children, that they will appreciate. They will always have something to remember about when they see it, and they will think about you as well. And this is, for me, a beautiful part. As Patek Philippe stated in one of their iconic ads, I think it was probably in the 90s or something, they had a quote that said, "You never actually own a Patek Philippe, you just take care of it for the next generation." And this is something that, for me, it makes me really emotional, because I think about it as buying it for my achievements, to make myself feel better, but also giving it to my children at some point, so they can enjoy it as well, and they can also see my achievements and what I have reached in my life. And this is, for me, very beautiful thought. These were the 5 reasons or 6 reasons, I'm not sure anymore how many they were, but these are some of the reasons why I love luxury watches and why I would always continue buying luxury watches, and why also you should buy luxury watches. See you next time.